sound. Great. Hi, I'm Björn. Nice to see you. I'm going to start with telling you why and when I became an entrepreneur for real. I have a background, like Leslie said, in the framfab industry. Framfab or Framtidsfabriken was a precursor to this place, I would say. I've already met people tonight here that were part of that incredible journey when we took the fleece jacket and shorts to a new level with Jonas Björn and all the other amazing people. And that was entrepreneurial, but I wasn't the entrepreneur. I was working in an entrepreneurial environment, which was fantastic. And I tried my wings like everybody else. But my decision came at exactly this point in life. It's a bit emphasized here. This is my car. Her name was Susie. Seat Ibiza Formula Racing conversion, 160 horsepower, and boy could she fly. And she did. On April 1st, 2006, at about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, she flew about 50 yards into the air on the freeway, the E6 freeway, just north of the Hallandsåsen, near Laholm. It was raining, it's pouring cats and dogs, and I was driving north to Gothenburg, and the last thing I remember is that I have to get out of this car or I will die. I managed to do that. Somehow, through flight or fight response, I managed to uncuff my belt, and this is for real, uncuff my belt, open the door because there were no windows broken, and fall out of the car / jump out of the car while it was in the air because I landed on the grass string between the lanes on my feet, and the car was 40 yards away on its roof. And very flat. So my left knee was completely busted. You wouldn't see it if you saw me walking, but you would definitely notice if you played like tennis with me, which you don't do anymore. Anyway, I was lying there, and during the next 5 weeks I spent in the hospital, and the next 16 weeks I spent with a cast up to here. I realized that life is too short and too precious to fulfill other people's dreams. So I quit my job as a marketing director on the management team of a publicly listed company and decided to start my own business. And I did successfully for a couple of years. And then I got dragged into all these kinds of projects like you talk about, Karsten. We all have this amazing ability to find new exciting projects and new exciting people, and we get involved and we're ecstatic about them and we do things. Couple of years down the road, a friend tells me, when are you going to really start that big thing that's going to be global, that's going to be something amazing that you can sell to Google one day? We all had the dream. So I did at one point. I started NinDevNinja Development, which was one of the first companies in the west coast of Sweden. It was a Gothenburg-based company, and it was a mobile development company, one of the first native development companies. Back in 2010. So we did native Android, native iOS, a lot of blended solutions where you have web backends and app front ends and so on. And we had a great time. We got lots of clients, we grew, everything started spinning. Things went faster and faster, but oh, was it bright. It was amazingly bright. And we came to the point which Karsten spoke about. We came to the point where we went from recruiting on the offense. In other words, in 6 months from now, we're going to branch into this section. So we're going to need 2 developers, 2 designers, a creative director, and somebody selling. Let's go. That's recruiting on the offense. You know what you want, you plan for it, you get them, you get started. The odds of success are so much better when you do that. Eventually, when that wheel starts spinning fast enough, what happens is that you need 4 people yesterday to solve the problem. We had too many clients coming in. But of course, you're an entrepreneur, so you're never going to say no. No, of course I'll help you. We'll sort that out. We're great. We'll fix it for you. No problem. Okay, I need 4 more developers. Come on. And so you start recruiting on the defense, which means you call everybody. Okay, anybody who's got a friend, I'll pay you $10,000 if you can find a guy who can start next week. He needs 4 years, not 3. He needs at least have seen a computer at some point. Not really that, you know, I'm playing around, but you know what I mean. It goes from being really well planned to being really emergency case based. And the problem is that when you hire somebody on day one, you pay them salary from day one. But if you work in a normal consultancy type where you have a client paying the bills at the other end, you work for 30 days, then you send the invoice, then it takes another 30 days. So 60 days down the road, you get paid. That means you have 2 months of payment for this person without any revenue, which means you either have to have a large coffin of cash, or you have to be really creative on how you do things and how you get paid and have the clients pay up front and all kinds of different solutions. We did that quite successfully, so successfully that we got an investor. Our biggest client became our investor, and they said, well, we want to buy at least a couple of 1,000 hours of development from you guys, but we think you're charging too much. We want cheaper. We want to pay less. And I said, well, you've already negotiated me into the bottom of what I can do, so if you want anything costing less, you'll have to go like starting an office in India or something. Cool, great idea, let's do that. So 6 months into the startup, I flew back and forth to Colombo in Sri Lanka and recruited, got a leasing contract on a building, hijacked a country manager, and hired 25 people. So everything was going great first year. Everything was going great the second year, but we outgrew ourselves. We came to the recruitment on the defense, did some bad recruiting. I was still the only person selling. We were about 40 people. And even if I consider myself a decent seller, 40 people is a hard bargain for anybody to try to support 40 developers with one person when you're in the service industry, not selling a product like we were. So what happened was that we tried to fix the problem of not having enough leadership by, instead of recruiting, because we had some bad cases like you did, Karsten, and I eventually had to learn very reluctantly to fire people. It is the worst thing you can do, but I had to learn it. But we thought, well, instead of recruiting somebody, especially a manager, because that takes time, you will usually not find a manager lying around. If they're any good, they have a job. So we bought a company instead. We thought that was a great idea to solve the problem. We buy a small product company who's in the mobile industry. We get their top 2 guys, who are fairly experienced people from the media industry, and they can be the operative manager and the sales manager. And they can do their own departments, and I will just be able to do some strategy, finally. So that was my plan. Turns out that the due diligence process, which is when you check up on the company, which is sort of like taking references on an employee, but on a company, it was short, it was intense, we didn't really have the time, and they seemed to be such great guys. Well, it turns out the company wasn't doing any profit at all, actually. In fact, it was making a loss. But by the time we realized that, we had already taken over the company. They were already moved into our building. We had 4 people we now had to support. That led to a little bit of bad blood between my investors and their investors on whether who should have told what and who should have said what and who should have been responsible for that. And what was the end result of this? Well, this. This is the Swedish crown. This is the actual crown that one of the 3 companies in my group was sold for during the bankruptcy that followed. 3 months earlier, the company was valued at 24 million. Now it was sold for 1 crown, and the main company was sold for 300,000 Swedish. That's a drop. Not just for the company, but if you're an entrepreneur and it's your life stream and you've finally taken that big leap and you're thinking, I'm going to make it, it's going to be fantastic, and then everything crashes after 3 years of really hard work. That's a tough nut to crack. So luckily, I had something to fall back on. I was recently married, came back home, and things didn't work out that well. 3 weeks later, we filed for bankruptcy in our relationship, so to speak, so we had a divorce. So in the same month of May 2013, I went through both a bankruptcy and a divorce. I was not the happiest of campers. It's a true fuck-up. It's about as close as you can get. And what happened? Well, I'm still an entrepreneur. I was still better off than when I was in the car lying on the freeway. I think that perhaps helped me get through it. I knew that there was something worse than being in this situation. I learned a lot of things. This is Don Quixote fighting the windmills. Because sometimes you do that. because you're so enveloped in your own dream, in your own passion of the things that you really, really love and you really, really want to get them done. And your dream is so big and you can only verbalize and manifest a little bit of it. And you get frustrated because everybody else don't understand this big dream and idea that you have. And then eventually you realize that you probably can't make it all happen by yourself. And maybe not even all of it should be realized. Maybe some of it should stay a dream, or at least for another day or another year or another investment round. So I learned that you can't take on the entire world on your own. You can't try to have, you can have any dream you want, but you have to size it up in bits that you can chew to make it real. So what did I do about it? Well, I wrote this book. The reason I wrote this book was I was having coffee with a bankruptcy lawyer, and I was Googling like an idiot. It's like bankruptcy support group, bankruptcy psychology, how to survive bankruptcy. There's nothing. There is nothing. There's a book about the legal ramifications of bankruptcy. There's a book on the economical ramifications. Both are instructional books for the university. There's no book, well, there was no book on how it feels, how it happens, and the dark side of entrepreneurship. Not to scare people off, because I'm still an entrepreneur, I'm going to be the rest of my life, but to show others that there is a challenge in growing fast. There is stuff that you have to sacrifice along the way and perhaps learn the hard way that it's hard to hire people, it's even harder to fire them. And there's stuff that we need to talk about that we very rarely talk about. This is why I was so excited when I found Leslie and the Fuck Up Nights, because I think we need to talk more about this, to learn from each other. In every other aspect, when you have a company, you always talk about preserving knowledge and knowledge management and knowledge transfer. When it comes to failure, we just throw it out the window. We should learn a lot more from each other so we can avoid making the same mistakes over and over again. So I wrote this book. It's about the startup. It's about the way we grew and all the great stuff. And it's about the bankruptcy. And it's about the way back and how I survived and what I did and what I think about what should be done in the national way. And in trying to stay fairly close to the mark, what did it do to me? Well, today I have a better balance between making money and having fun. It's always fun in the beginning when you're successful. The problem is that when you're working 16-hour days all day, every day, and you don't have time to see your friends, you don't have time to do your hobbies, you're not having any fun anymore because the numbers are going down. It's not that much fun anymore. Find the level where you're comfortable. I realized that I'm not comfortable being the CEO for 40 people. I've learned to fire people, but I'm not comfortable in doing it. So I'll try to keep my staff to a minimum if I ever have staff again. That doesn't mean I'm a less of an entrepreneur or that I'm a failure because I have failed. We often equate, this is very Swedish as well, we equate having failure occur and being a failure as an individual. One has to do with what you do, the other has to do with your identity. They have nothing to do with each other. You're not a failure because you have failed. We all fail, it's how we learn. Because when you succeed, you just keep doing the same things over and over again. You never learn anything. It's when you screw up, you learn how to change. So I found a better balance between these two pills. And where has it gotten me? 1 year later, well, I'm a published author, which I'm very happy for. I got to keep the house in the divorce. I'm an entrepreneur again, with lots of things to do, so much that I actually have learned to say, no, I'm fully booked, thank you, please come back in 6 months. And as chance would have it, some friends hooked me up with an old childhood friend, and we hooked it up, and then she got pregnant, and so now I have these two, little Felix and Tesla. So things can turn around from the darkest dark of night when you really feel fucked up, 5 ways from Wednesday, to this. And don't be afraid to do it, but above all, don't be afraid to talk about it. Thank you.